All right. So for people who doesn't know Deej, Deej is actually a British documentary filmmaker with over 8 years of experience specializing in capturing cinematic footage to tell compelling personal stories. I'm just reading out whatever is written on his website right now. He has gained vast experience in efficiently working as a one-man crew, even in constraining environments. He focuses on environmental and humanitarian issues all over the world with the aim of creating meaningful impact through his films. So that's his bio kind of thing. So Deej, I would like you to take the stage and tell us more about you. Where did you grow up? More like a personal story of yours. Then we'll head on to your career.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. So yeah, as Suraj said, I am Deej Phillips and I'm a filmmaker from the UK. I actually got into filmmaking a little bit late, I would say. I was actually studying music production and sound engineering at Birmingham City University in the UK. And that was my plan, to try and be, you know, a sound engineer or a music producer or something like that, get into the music industry. But quite early on during that course, I realized that I'm actually not very good at music, and that was a terrible idea. And luckily, during that time, I got a camera in my hands. I started filming a reggae band in Birmingham. In Birmingham, there's a big reggae scene. So I started hanging out with these reggae guys, filming them do live performances, which led on to doing music videos for them. And at that time, it was just fun, pure fun. Like, never ever expected it to be a career. Was just messing around with my good friend Sandro, who's also a filmmaker. He was recently filming Nimsdai, do his Mission Impossible, climbing the 14 highest mountains around the world. So together we filmed, yeah, mainly music videos for this reggae band. And people seem to enjoy these videos. So we started to get more work. We started to do wedding videos and other promos, like pubs, clubs, just anything that anybody who would let us film. And at the beginning, you know, the money was non-existent or really, really poor, but eventually, you know, people got to know what we were doing, really started to build a bit of a portfolio. When I started out, it was roughly when the Canon 5D Mark II came out. So, you know, this kind of cinematic filmmaking was pretty new. So it was, at that time, it was like relatively easy to impress people. You know, the shallow depths of people would see the shallow depths of field and they would think that, you know, our films were quite high production value, even though we were just starting out and we were learning a lot very, very quickly. So when you fast forward a few years, we continue to make other promotional content, you know, doing more corporate work, doing other music videos, other creative projects, promos, adverts, always mainly for online, not so much for TV or anything else. And then 2 years ago, roughly, was when I decided to start doing documentaries. Was always interested in it, but hadn't had any experience doing it. But just started filming things that I thought were interesting, like a music studio in Birmingham that records music to tape in their studio, and a stop motion animation studio in Birmingham as well. Just things that I thought were things I'd like to learn a little bit more about, essentially. That then led on to doing quite a lot of like humanitarian documentaries, mainly about issues or humanitarian issues in Africa, a lot of work in Kenya and South Africa, and then doing short documentaries and like NGO films in India as well. And then from that, for a long time, wanted to get into do something related to climate change. It's something that I have been interested in for a long time, but didn't really know you know, how I could try to have some kind of impact or how I could get involved. So yeah, for quite some time I was thinking about it, and then that's when I got in touch with Nalima Valangi, and she's a journalist from India, and now we're collaborating on a documentary project here in Nepal. So it's a climate change documentary that we're filming here in Nepal. We started filming in October last year, and we spent 2.5 months here. We were in Salianta, in Hetuda and Daman, filming different stories. And now we're back here. Well, the plan was to come back and finish filming, to go to Mustang and finish and film the full story for our documentary, and to do the experts interviews, climate change expert interviews. But obviously with the lockdown, that's meant that we've had to put that on hold for now. You know, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what the situation, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So right now we're just waiting to see what happens, and we hope that we will be able to finish the filming in the next month or so. But we'll see. But the main focus of this documentary is obviously it's climate change, but we want to focus on human stories, on people. We want to show how people are being impacted by climate change now, and use these stories as case studies to show how it's going to affect people globally, and how much of a pressing issue it is, and how important it is.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, good. Just checking on people on Facebook. Do they hear the audio now? I can't check it myself, but
let me check, right? Just like
check. In between, while Robin checks on that, you've already touched this little again, and also before. I just want to know how you like got into filmmaking in terms of getting inspiration. You talked about it a little before, like preview in sort of way, but if you could explain what was that moment when you thought maybe this is what filmmaking is, what is your forte, or that's what your cup of tea is. How did you get into that?
Yeah. Like, I wish I had some amazing inspirational story for you. But like, as I kind of said earlier, like me and Sandro, my good friend Sandro, who I worked with for many years with on our production company, we were just like messing around, like we were just, as I say, hanging out with this reggae band. We were just filming all kinds of different things. For the fun of it. So I guess that's kind of what drew us to it. Like at the time Sandro was doing photography, I hadn't really ever picked up a camera properly ever before. So I think I was 20, oh God, yeah, I was like 21, 22 when we first started filming. And before that, I hadn't even ever considered it as an option. But even though in some ways I got into it quite late, that wasn't an issue. And I think that's something that I hope other people can keep in mind too, is that it doesn't really matter how old you are. If you enjoy it, if you're passionate about it, if you get a camera in your hands and you start filming whatever it is that interests you, then I believe that for sure it's something that anyone can do if they just put their mind to it, essentially.
So did you go to a film school, right?
No. YouTube is my film school.
YouTube. All right. Okay, good.
So like I was studying music production in Birmingham. We did actually do a video production module. So this was like, it was for 1 year, but it was like an hour a week, and it was super basic. Like it's fun to watch the videos that we made from that module, to watch those videos back, because it's pretty awful. But apart from that, like as I say, for sure I learned everything through watching YouTube tutorials. You know, there's tons of great stuff online to learn filmmaking, and going out and messing up. Like at the beginning when we were filming that reggae band, we messed up so badly, so many times. Like just stupid things like the card would run out of space, or we'd run out of batteries, or, you know, the exposure would just be completely wrong, or the microphone wouldn't be plugged in properly. And I feel, even though we weren't having a professional education in filmmaking, because we were going out and, you know, making mistakes on the job. Luckily at the time, you know, this reggae band knew our situation. They knew we were new to it. But going out there and, you know, when it's kind of high pressure in some ways, you don't want to let people down. You know, I don't want to let the reggae band down. I don't want them to not have a good video from their performance, because they've worked hard for it too. But, you know, when you do mess up in those situations, then it kind of sticks with you. And then you're more, for me anyway, more motivated to learn from our mistakes and then get better. But it literally was like, you know, go home, watch YouTube videos about exposure or white balance or whatever, then go outside and film something, and then go back and watch another YouTube video about something else, and then experiment. Like, I think that's important as well. Like a few years ago, I had so much work on, and I'm sure, Suraj, you've probably been in this situation as well, where you've just been so busy that you're just filming, editing, meetings, and it's just like a bit of a conveyor belt. You don't have any time to like experiment or do anything differently. And you might be having a camera in your hands a lot, and you might be creating a lot, but you're not improving. You're just kind of leveled off, and you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Then when I started doing like the documentaries I'm doing now and taking a step back from the commercial work, I've had so much more time to experiment, and I feel like my filmmaking is improving a lot quicker now. So that's been nice.
All right. So like, what's your film like process like? How do you come up with like with any video you want to do, be it your travel, be it your a simple documentary, or, you know, extensive documentary? What's the process that you think of? Like, what kind of subject does that interest you, or how do you go on?
Yeah, so I think as I said a little bit earlier, I always try and find stuff that I'm interested in, that I'm curious about. So, you know, climate change is my main focus now, but as I said before, like it could be anything, like the music studio in Birmingham, the stop motion animation. I've got a few stills from some of my recent documentaries. Can you see this now? David, the guy having a shower in the rainforest. So yeah, I think first of all, I try to think of a topic or a theme or something like this. So with this documentary here about David, I wanted to do something like, initially before I even knew who David was, I want something that shows that rainforests are important, but not in a direct way, not just like an informative video that says, you know, rainforests absorb this amount of oxygen and it's good for biodiversity and all these things. So I was at the time in Costa Rica, and I wanted to film, you know, a documentary about the rainforest. So I knew that I needed to find a character. Like, that's generally, at the moment anyway, and what I've done for a while, is I like to tell the story through a character. I like for it to be quite personal and quite intimate, and for you to follow somebody's journey in some kind of way, or for you to learn about somebody. So while I was there in Costa Rica, I was just chatting to everybody who would, you know, who would talk to me, and asking them, you know, do you know anybody who is a forest ranger or lives in the rainforest, and, you know, who might be just a bit of a quirky character, might be a bit of a funny person, or maybe they're doing something that's interesting, some kind of angle, some kind of hook that would be interesting. And multiple people said, "Oh, you've got to meet David. You've got to go. You've got to have a chat with David." So yeah, I called him up and I speak to him, and I find out that he has lived in Costa Rica in the rainforest for almost a year now. He's from Amsterdam. He sold everything he owned to move into the rainforest and to build a little hut and to conserve about 120 hectares of rainforest. And he has no electricity, no running water, like lives a super basic life there in the rainforest. So obviously straight away, like I knew he was like the perfect character. He was the exact person I was looking for. And he had a nice kind of emotional story as well. He wasn't, the reason why he moved from Amsterdam was because he wasn't happy. He was a bit depressed. He was unfulfilled. He wasn't particularly enjoying the kind of capitalist, consumerist society that he lived in Holland. So he got rid of all of that and completely turned his life upside down, and now lives in a rainforest where there's poisonous spiders and poisonous frogs and monkeys and sloths, and it rains a lot and it's hard work, but he feels like he's contributing, and he feels like he's doing a good thing. So yeah, in general, like for me, I think that's I find the topic first. Another example quickly is this fisherman from Kerala. There were floods in Kerala in 2018, really, really bad floods. I wanted to film something about that. Through my good friend Amal, I met this fisherman, and he became the main character to kind of just talk about what happened during the floods and how it's affected him since then. And to be honest, like he's not the most exciting, compelling character in the entire world. He's he's a quite serious person, but I think the interest comes from for this documentary. The interest comes from the location. For me personally, like the Kerala backwaters are so beautiful, and I think that makes it interesting for people to watch, and also to hear his story of what happened during the flood. One more documentary that I'm making at the moment. This is Andy. He's a one-man band musician. This is very different. This is just like a bit of a comedy documentary that I'm creating. Again, he's like quite an endearing, compelling, funny character. And that's why we chose to make a documentary about him. And the kind of idea is playing on the fact that he's a one-man band musician and how that's a kind of lonely existence. So yeah, I think generally it's like it's finding a topic and just finding an interesting angle that will catch people's attention.
So just to I'm sure there are a lot of people want to ask their own question, but just putting a few of mine before we do that, is because you said you are a one-man person, right? One-man crew kind of thing. Where do you fit? So where do you fit most comfortable? Do you write your own script? Do you edit? Do you what do you do, and what do you think you are not comfortable with?
Yeah. So I enjoy filming. My favorite part for sure is having a camera in my hands and just being outside and filming people and meeting people and just seeing how different people live their lives, like whether that's a fisherman on the Kerala backwaters or Andy who lives in the south of England. So for me, personally, it's for sure the filming is what I enjoy the most. Editing, a lot of my stuff I do everything, produce, film and edit, but the climate change documentary we're doing here in Nepal, there's a team of us. I'm collaborating with Nalima Vilangi, the journalist from India. So we're kind of like co-producing it. She is more so directing it, and then I'm the DOP, the cinematographer. But I think you know this as well, with a lot of these documentaries, everybody's doing everything, and it's kind of like you do need to know a bit of each role. You do kind of need to be capable. Well, I don't know, it depends. If you're working on a big documentary, which I don't do, then maybe you just stay your DOP and that's it, and you don't do anything else. But for the kind of stuff I do, like it's a bit of everything. I think generally I don't script my documentaries that much. I structure it maybe before, but you know, naturally it doesn't follow that structure, and you just have to adapt to what you see. With our climate change documentary, it's kind of half human stories and half science. And for sure, my strength is the human stories. The science, I try my best to learn and do my research and have a better understanding about climate change in general. My understanding isn't terrible, but I know that I'm not a science communicator. So for me to, interview the experts and to come up with the script after we've filmed the interviews, that's not my strong point for sure. And I'm very lucky to be working with Nalima because she's really good at this stuff. So yeah, for sure, filming is my favorite.
And I should comment on your cinematic shots that you've been shooting. One of the best one was the Kerala is also really nice. Talking about documentaries, why don't you tell us something about your Demystifying Climate Crisis Through Human Stories? That's a long title, but I think the issue is also really deep. So why don't you tell about how it came out to be and how that landed you in Nepal, and you've shot with Rohit, and why all those inner details.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone can come up with a more concise title.
So the title is Demystifying Climate
we'd
Crisis Through Human Stories.
It's a little bit longer. Well, actually, that was the original title. Now it's the human cost of climate crisis.
All right.
Currently, at the end of our promo video, it's the human cost of climate change: stories from a world in crisis. But again, that's even longer than the original one. So we're figuring that out. But there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. But yeah, so like I've touched on this a little bit already, but it's going to be a feature-length documentary consisting of hopefully 4 stories. We filmed 3 of these stories now already. We filmed them at the end of last year, and the theme of the documentary is water. So climate change, water issues in Nepal. For each of the stories, each of those 4 stories, we are focusing on a main character, where we're following them as they show us their struggle, whether it's, one is about flood, one is about water shortages, and another one is about loss of life due to flood. And then the 4th one, which we're hoping to film soon, is to go up into the mountains to Mustang and film about climate migration. So we have these 4 hopefully personal stories that are focused on individuals. You get to know them a little bit. You hopefully it impacts you on some kind of emotional level. You start to care about them and their story. And then in between those stories, we will be talking about the science. So we are interviewing about 10 climate change experts. They're all Nepali, they're all local. And there might be one person from somewhere else, but we're trying, we're using Nepal as the case study for the documentary, but the documentary is relatable globally, because we're talking about or we're relating it globally. So we're talking about floods here in Nepal, but this is something that can happen all over the world. And we are, our audience is a global audience. So we are keeping that in mind. But yeah, I think with a lot of these documentaries, with a lot of these climate change documentaries, it's all very science focused. So there's lots of statistics and numbers, and you're just staring at an expert chat to you for like minutes and minutes, and it's interesting, and it's shocking, because obviously climate change is pretty shocking. The future is pretty scary when you know the numbers and all of this, but it's not always the most compelling thing to watch. And I don't think these kinds of documentaries always stick with you. For a few days you might be saying to your friends, 50% of the world is going to be suffering from water shortages. That's not true, by the way. I just completely made that up. But, something like that. Which it doesn't stick with you. So what we are really trying to do is make it personal, tell these human stories, but then at the same time also inform people and educate people about what is happening and what the future really does look like. And then at the end of that, we're giving people actionable things that they can do themselves to make a difference. And yeah, I don't know, it's for me anyway, it's complicated. And when I started this project in September last year, I thought I had a good understanding of climate change. Then I arrive in Kathmandu at the beginning of October, and I meet up with Nalima. It was like the first time that we'd ever met. We were just chatting. We didn't know each other before. We were just chatting online. We both cared about climate change, so we wanted to do something. We thought it would be good for us to collaborate. So we were, we met up here in Kathmandu. We went out for a meal, and we were chatting about climate change over a beer. And she was just really woke me up, and really depressed me as well, to be honest, because she was telling me, all the facts about climate change and how much confusion there is, or how much misinformation there is, and yeah, it was pretty depressing. But also at the same time, it made us realize that there's a good opportunity to inform people in the right way and make a difference, hopefully. So yeah, that's why we chose it. And Nepal, choosing Nepal specifically was because mainly because of its diverse geography. So obviously having the mountains, and then having the lowlands, all the water related issues that happens in those different geographies made it a very good place for us to choose. And it's an incredibly beautiful country, which makes it a lot easier for me as a filmmaker to make something interesting, because obviously the Himalayas, getting shots of that is really beautiful, really cinematic and stuff. And then the culture as well, from like a Western perspective, I guess, the culture's super interesting, and super vibrant, and quite there's a lot of aspects of it that you can film and make it quite interesting, I think.
So I just shared your trailer on the chat window of Zoom for people. Before I miss this comment, I think that goes well with your thing, is something that Vedant asked was, in filmmaking, does visuals, the video, matter more, or the story with we are trying to present? So is the visuals more of a value, or the story? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize this, I guess, but it's kind of all about story. You can have a documentary with really rubbish visuals, but if the story is compelling and unique and interesting, then people will watch it and people will enjoy it. I, for a long time, before I got into documentary, it was all about visuals for me. Like the content I was creating was, you know, you'd have your song on the timeline, you'd have your song, and then you would just have B-roll over the top, and you'd just be cutting it in time to the music, and it would be quite exciting and like dynamic movement, and it would be quite interesting to watch, but you don't like really learn anything from it, or you know, it doesn't really stick with you. So yeah, like storytelling is very difficult, and I'm still learning how to do it in the best way and to have the best possible impact and structuring it well and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think 100% the story is way more important. You know, the visuals for sure. Like, I don't want to, maybe I was a bit over the top with that answer there, because of course visuals are important, and you can tell a lot of the story through the visuals. You know, sometimes you don't even need to have any audio, you don't need to have any voiceover, you can just tell a story through the visuals, but technically that's still the storytelling side. But for sure, you know, I think a lot of people waste too much time trying to get the best possible image out of their character, out of their camera. When in reality, I would say it's important to really try to focus on capturing a story in an interesting way, and structuring it and telling the story in a way that catches people's attention, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So there are a few questions popping up on the chat window, but again, we will collect some more. If there are any questions, do write to us on our Zoom chat or on our, which seems to be working now. So, you know, you're a freelancer, right? In a normal, like, you don't work for any company, you're a freelancer. How do you, in terms of making money, because climate change documentary and all those human interest stories, does it pay you, or how does it work?
Yeah. No, like I don't get paid much through making the kind of documentaries that I've been talking about here. That's all my passion projects, and this is all stuff that hasn't earned me any money, and it's cost me money, you know, some more than others. Our climate change documentary we're doing here, we are fundraising for that. We've just started the second round of fundraising. That money covers the expenses, but you know, we're not paying ourselves through that money. So I think I was having this conversation with Nalima recently. She can't get her head around how so many documentary filmmakers just don't make proper money, you know? Like, I was trying to explain it to her. I was like, that is literally, unfortunately, the way that it is. You've got people that are making, not all the time, but, you know, for the most part, you've got people that are making, or people that get their documentaries onto Netflix, but the money they get from Netflix just pays the costs of the production. So it's incredibly difficult to make proper money from independent documentary filmmaking. So naturally you have to do on commercial work as well. So that varies, but luckily for me now, a lot of my commercial work is in line with what I want to do anyway. So just before I came to Nepal, I was in India for 2 weeks filming short films for NGOs. I know that Suraj, you do a lot of this work as well, making these films and promo videos for NGOs about, you know, again, humanitarian issues, environmental issues and stuff like that. And yeah, that can be good money. And obviously it's, for me personally, it's nice because you are having some kind, well, I'd like to think you're having some kind of impact doing that as well. You know, you're promoting good causes and social impact stuff in general. So I would say, like, of course, you don't get into documentary filmmaking to make money. Like, nobody does. It's only do it if you really, really, really enjoy it a lot and you're willing to take the hit financially. Like for me, over the last almost 2 years now, yeah, I've taken a big hit financially. Before I was working on some pretty nice projects where the pay wasn't good, and I got to travel quite a lot. One was with a cryptocurrency company. I was traveling around with them for 3.5 months, filming vlogs for them, and the pay was cool, and got to go to like the US and to Hong Kong and all kinds of places, and it was fun for sure. Like, I'm not complaining, but I very much enjoy doing this kind of stuff so much more. The climate change documentary here in Nepal, it's for sure nice to do something that hopefully will have an impact. We'll see how it goes. Some kind of social impact stuff. Yeah.
All right. So we'll start taking in questions. We already have quite a lot. So I'll just, you can also see on your chat, but Sabrina asks, do you always use a main character for your documentary film in a particular topic?
Not always. If I can, I will. But obviously, sometimes maybe you just don't find the right character. So for one of the stories in our climate change documentary, the kind of main character is a football academy. Essentially, it's a bunch of guys that run a football academy in Hetuda. So there's not one specific person we're following a bunch of the guys and some of the kids as well that attend the football academy. So sometimes you can't find the character, but I think you can always, as I said, like in that example, the football academy was the main character. So sometimes it helps to think of it in that way. Maybe it's not a person as the main character, but it's an object or something else, and then you can kind of still keep the documentary focused in a certain way, I would say.
So adding to that and to her question is talking about visuals, do you make storyboards before you shoot? Technical question.
Yeah, more of like a written storyboard. I'm trying to think if I have an example. But yeah, I definitely do, but I don't go into too much detail because it's impossible, right? Like, well, it depends how you make it. Like for my documentaries, I like it to be natural. I try very hard for it to be natural, and I try very hard for it to be authentic. You can make a documentary where you script it out and you get them to read it as like a voiceover, and then you get them to act, like I'll go pick up this water jar and take it over here and all of this kind of stuff, which is fine. Like that's one way to make a documentary. But for
Deej?
Can you still hear me?
Yep, now we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think. Let me know if you stop. I'll switch to data if you can't can't hear me. Yeah,
now it's okay.
But yeah, so I like to capture things naturally. So I will, before I film a documentary, not all the time again, but like generally, I will write out like the intro. The main character will be at their home, and they're going to do this, and this, and then we need to go into like the main story where you discover what the conflict is in some kind of way, and you imagine, you write it how you expect it to happen, but it never ever happens the way you expect it to happen. And by the end of it, you look at your script at the beginning and you look at what you have, and yeah, from my experience, it's always very, very different. But I always, that doesn't mean that storyboarding or scripting beforehand is a waste of time at all. I think it's super important because it gives you something to work from. But just, I'm always quite quick to deviate from that original script, because you learn something, like maybe there's some other conflict that the character has, or that something starts unfolding in front of you. Like, I think capturing events happen is quite important in documentary, or it makes for a more compelling story if you're seeing something unfold in front of your eyes, rather than just like a story being told after the fact. But
also,
yeah,
you being a one man crew, you fly drone, you shoot your own video with your stills, you do all that stuff to like yourself, right?
yeah, for the most part, yeah. Like the Carol the Fisherman one, I had my friend Abby. He was assisting me, but he was mainly doing like sound. The one with David in the rainforest, it was just me and David hanging out in the rainforest for a couple of days. It was really fun. But yeah, like literally, there are many times where I'll just be doing it all completely by myself. So obviously sound and lighting as well, and then all the way through to the edit. But I'm not a huge fan of editing, so where I can, I try to avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that replies to Robik's question. We have a question from Mario. What is your biggest goal in terms of filmmaking? Would you like to be made a Netflix documentary or win a BAFTA, or you just make stuff and then accomplishments are secondary?
Yeah, honestly, I don't really think about that stuff too much. It would be lovely to have a documentary on Netflix. That'd be pretty cool thing to say. But it's not really my target, my aim. I would say, especially with this climate change documentary, it's about having impact. It's about people seeing it. It's about having meaningful impact, whatever that means, whether it's getting many people talking about climate change or understanding it better, or a policy maker in Nepal seeing the documentary and then thinking, okay, we need to do things a little bit differently. That's the kind of like outcome that I want from my films. But obviously at the same time, winning a BAFTA, getting a documentary on Netflix or whatever would be awesome. But that's
awesome.
Yeah, it's not the aim for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay. So we have Vedant asking, do you make commercial advertisement for TVCs and companies as well?
No TV stuff. It is all mainly online, all kinds of different things online. My background was mainly like events, so filming all kinds of different events, from corporate staff to like music events, festivals. Like for a good few years, a lot of my work was like club nights and raves and festivals in the UK. So a lot of like music stuff in the past, which was fun, like going to parties and filming some pretty fun parties. But I haven't done too many like big commercial gigs, I would say. Like it's like, I think it's for smaller businesses, medium businesses. Like I've done stuff with some pretty big brands, but it's always for online.
Okay. Just skimming through some questions. One more is, does your overall work process vary if you are doing a commercial project or doing a personal project? So does the work process differ, or is it the same?
Yeah, so I haven't mentioned this yet, but a lot of my commercial work, I work as a freelance camera operator or a freelance cinematographer. So people, a production company would hire me, and then I turn up on the day, I film, I do what they tell me to do, and then I leave, and then it's job done, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just knowing that at the end of the day you can just move on and you don't have whatever, you know, all the editing and everything else that comes with it. But yeah, the process is really different, like entirely different. I think the main difference is, you know, you have somebody to answer to when it's a commercial project. So you have your client, and at the beginning, let's say you storyboard and you script, then you send that to them, and they'll be like, this bit isn't really fitting with our brand, so can we change that? And then you change it and you send it back, and they're like, maybe this isn't either. You know, some commercial clients can be like a real big nightmare in that way, where the creative freedom is sucked out of it, and you're creating something very different to what you set out to create. And that was my biggest problem with commercial work, is that the creativity just, yeah, it really does get sucked out of it, and then it gets a bit disheartening, because then it starts to look like something that you're not proud of, I would say. So the process is similar, but throughout the entire process, from pre-production all the way through to production and editing, you have somebody over your shoulder who's like, you know, I don't like that, I don't like this, change this, do it in this way. So yeah, it's very different, because obviously it is, as I said earlier as well, it's less experimental. You can't really, yeah, less freedom. That's the main point, is that there's less freedom.
More money, less freedom.
Yeah, that's it.
So we have another interesting question from Labesh. He says, do you think of editing before shooting, or do you prefer to edit after shooting? How does your process start on different? It's almost similar, but in terms of editing, do you shoot everything and come back, sit down and edit, or do you, when you shoot everything, you make the story while you're editing? How do you process that?
Yeah, so obviously have some kind of idea of what the story will be before I start filming. So I do reference the original script or storyboard to try and piece that story together if it's still relevant. But generally, I will go into my editing software, and I will look at the interview and, well, get the transcriptions or the translations of the interview or interviews, and then piece it together from what the person is saying. Yeah, so use that as the base, and then layer the B-roll on top of that, and then create the breathing space that is necessary, and then obviously adapt it from there. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a question from Facebook. While working in multiple projects at the same time, how do you balance yourself emotionally, as documentary filmmaking can be emotionally draining?
Do me a favor and say that one more time. You cut out a little bit.
So while working on multiple projects in the same time, how do you balance yourself emotionally, especially because documentary filmmaking can be emotionally draining?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is.
So one thing I do now is I put less pressure on myself to like work all the time, especially coming from like a more commercial background. You're just working all day, and like sometimes all night, and that's the aspect of it that's really emotionally draining for me. Like right now I have 3 projects, or 3 main projects that are on the go right now. It's the climate change documentary, a really short little film about an eagle hunter in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm editing that myself, and then the one-man band musician documentary that my friend Mike is editing. So I guess, you know, it helps when, if I was editing all 3 of those, and I would lose my mind, I think, you know, that's just too much time sat in front of a computer, and it's really tough. But I think if I was to be editing all three of those, then, you know, you just got to have like a cutoff point. Like, I think that's something that I learned relatively recently, is treating it as a 9 to 5 job, getting up in the morning, getting changed, you know, putting proper clothes on, sitting in front of the computer, editing until 12 or 1, having a lunch break, editing until 5, and then switching off and trying not to do any work after that, which helps keep me sane, I would say. Yeah, like a lot of these stories are emotional, like especially this climate change documentary we're filming here in Nepal. It's like it's super emotional stories, and it's horrible to hear these stories. But you have to be able to switch off, I think. Like, you know, you just have to learn how to switch off. I think I'm quite lucky in that I can do that. I can move on from it relatively quickly.
So I'll just connect another question that kind of relates to what you're saying is, for your personal project, how do you decide the perfect time to end the story? As documentaries can be unpredictable, as many things unfold during the shoots, how do you follow a story? How long do you want to continue the story? I think this falls right into your climate change
Well, like
documentary,
filming
right?
it. How long filming it? Or
So it's like, when do you know it's, you know, that's enough of interviews, that's enough of the story, you don't want to pursue any more stories? How do you decide on that?
Yeah, so this was a very experimental project from the beginning, so we didn't define it too much. In some ways, this project was a little bit more simple because it's 4 mini stories. So roughly each story is going to be about 8 to 10 minutes. So in terms of like knowing how much interview content we need, we knew that like a 45-minute interview with the main character for the most part is like enough for that kind of length, because during that time you're going to have the expert interviews on top of that as well. So yeah, it was relatively straightforward, knowing when we've got enough B-roll, when we've got enough interviews done, and all this kind of stuff. Obviously for longer documentaries it gets a little bit more complicated, but I think when you're working on like long-term documentaries, you do shoot and then at least review the footage, and then you have an idea of what you have, and you have an idea of how much more you need to capture as well.
So I'll just go do more questions. So you travel a lot and it's hard to take loads of stuff with you. What is the essential camera and sound equipment you always carry with you? That's the tech.
Yeah,
Camera stuff is here,
questions.
man. I told you there'll be a question about that.
Sweet. Well, this is my setup that I use a lot, I would say. So it's a Sony A6500, which is obviously a very small camera, which is good for being like a one-man crew. It's super portable. Image quality is great, in my opinion. It definitely does the job. There are way better cameras out there, especially now. But as I was saying earlier, like it's you know, it doesn't always make that much of a difference. If you can just focus on the story rather than your gear, then I think that is beneficial. So anyway, I have my Sony A6500 with a handful of lenses. On the camera there is the Sony 28mm f2, which is the lens that I use 95% of the time. You know, I like that focal length. It's got a nice shallow depth of field. For interviews, I use a 50mm 1.8. But for the most part, unless I need like a wide shot, I'll use that lens and I'll get nice and close to the subject. Like that's, I guess, my style, and that's the way that I like to shoot things. Always have the little Rode wireless go on top, which amazes me how good the audio quality is. Like on the Kerala fisherman documentary, and for all my documentaries really, the Atmos sound is from that microphone that's plugged straight into the camera. And again, because I film quite close to the subject, the audio quality is quite good, you know, whether they're I don't know, doing whatever, doing something with their hands, pouring water, you get quite a nice clean sound from that microphone. Obviously, I got it here on a gimbal, the Xeon Weebill S, I think this one is. And I use it a lot, maybe more than I should, I will admit, but the thing that's so useful about it is that you are able to move. Like if somebody starts walking, you can follow them straight away and you're capturing a nice shot. You know, it's a very efficient way of shooting, especially when you're got a camera like the Sony a6500 that has like good autofocus. Then I have, you can't really see it too well, but I have the small HD focus monitor, which is like one of the most important pieces of equipment I would say I have. Like just the screen on the a6500 isn't very good, so being able to see the image nice and big and make sure it's in focus, I think that's super important. And then in terms of other microphones, interviews, I'll always use a lapel microphone, Rode Wireless Go, which is tiny, so that's super portable again. Then drone is the Mavic Air. Yeah, Mavic Air, which is again super small. Everything I try and just have the most portable set of equipment I possibly can, because I don't want it to slow me down. And sometimes, we are riding on top of a bus going from some rural area to somewhere else, and you don't want to be messing around with a big heavy camera bag. So that is super important for me. But yeah, like generally it's like, I think it's the kind of stuff that a lot of filmmakers use. Like most, Suraj, you have a better camera than I do, and most people have
you have a better story. So talking about camera gears, I just wanted to mix this question is, you said you don't get paid, so what motivates you to keep going? Because camera gears are expensive, right? So doing personal projects doesn't really pay you in terms of cash, but how does that motivate you to keep going?
Yeah, like I had more equipment than I knew what to do with in the past while I was doing a lot of this commercial work. So I had like, a motorized slider. I had, what else did I have? A jib, a crane, multiple tripods. I had a A7S II and two A6500s at one point. I had like literally like 20 lenses. Like it was just completely unnecessary. So I guess it's kind of easy for me to talk like this, saying that like gear isn't important when I came from having a lot of gear. I guess maybe that's somewhat like hypocritical or whatever, but I did learn that it's not necessary, and yeah, that it's more important to focus on story. But in terms of what keeps me motivated, yeah, like it's kind of like, as I keep saying, like impact, like doing something that has meaning, something that hopefully helps people in some kind of way, ideally. When I did the Kerala Fisherman documentary, like some of the messages that I received after doing that was really, really lovely. Like people from Kerala who really appreciated it, and yeah, like I think that's where I'm at now, is like I would love to ideally make the world a better place through my filmmaking. I know that's like not an easy thing to do, and I'm very far away from that right now, I would say, because it's my audiences aren't particularly big right now, but the target is to like impact, like have meaningful impact. So that's the motivation.
All right. Just talking about your editing style, I was just watching your Cycle of Life video.
Yeah.
And it had a very interesting, the way you edited it, the way you were working on that whole concept. What's the story behind it?
Cycle of Life, or
yeah, Cycle of Life.
Okay, yeah, that is a long story, that one.
Yeah, you have 5 minutes.
It's still not finished. Long story short, I was working with a guy who was directing and financing that project. So for people that haven't seen it, it was going to be a documentary series about humanitarian and environmental issues in mainly Africa, but in India as well. So over the space of 2 years, we spent 65 days filming this documentary. And then a couple of months after we got back from the last trip, the guy directing and financing it just disappeared. He went quiet and nobody knew where he was. And still to this day, I don't know where he is. So I'm kind of just sitting on that footage now, which is... which sucks a little bit. But anyway, we're hoping to get it finished in some kind of way. Maybe if we can find some other people to finance it and there's somebody that's interested and it's looking quite promising. So that's the kind of story about that project. But yeah, in terms of the editing style, like, was that the question,
Yeah,
Suraj?
one of the question was, yeah, the editing.
Okay, cool.
Because
Yeah.
it was a pretty interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, like I like that. It's such a shame that we didn't end up finishing it. I hope we do finish it. But yeah, so I made like a 5-minute promo video from all the footage. And you know, it's heavily driven by the music, I would say. I think the music works really well. It starts off by introducing a bunch of different stories about issues in Africa and India, like children living in a slum in Nairobi, to rural communities with water shortages in Uttar Pradesh. And it starts off like really bleak, to be honest. Some of these stories are really, really quite distressing to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And then it picks up, the music picks up, and then it goes into kind of like a nice montage, hearing positive snippets from different people. But I think in terms of like the editing style, like I always try to keep things simple as possible, like just cut, maybe a fade. But apart from that, I try not to do crazy transitions, or I don't do crazy. I used to do crazy transitions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it so much anymore. But generally, I try and keep it nice and simple and try and create a nice flow through maybe matching shots and through using sound.
Mm-hmm.
On that edit, we got a sound designer involved, a guy called Yosha. He's from, I can't remember where he's from, but I met him in Birmingham. But really good sound designer, and that really brings everything together. Like that's huge. That's something that I'm learning a lot about over the last year or whatever, is how important sound design is. But yeah, in terms, as I said, in terms of the editing style, it's all quite simple. A nice kind of tempo, a nice kind of flow to it. But my editing style is simple, and I guess like try and keep it natural again, natural, authentic. Like nowadays, I try not to use much slow motion or stuff like. I'll try not to overuse it. Of course, I do. I do still use it for the Eagle Hunter documentary that I'm editing at the moment. I'm using quite a lot of slow motion.
Slow motion.
Yeah. I could potentially show that. I don't know if Final Cut will work. But anyway.
All right, we'll just go on with the questions, and also the links that we're talking about, the movies that we're talking about, I think we'll post it on our Facebook later on, just so that people can go back and look at your website, your Instagram, and your YouTube channel. Okay, so going back to the question, there's quite a lot now again. So what has been your favorite place to film so far? Is there a place that you'd love to go and film your next documentary? Once the lockdown is over, that is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start answering these questions a lot quicker, yeah, because I'm rambling. So we're going to smash through these questions now. Lightning round. Favorite place was probably it's a tie between Kerala on the backwaters. That was absolutely insane, just so beautiful, so peaceful, the sounds and everything. It was just a really cool place to film. And I would say probably, maybe tied with like Kyrgyzstan, when I filmed the Eagle Hunter there. Beautiful mountains, beautiful landscapes. it's a country that are like people who are historically like nomadic. So they're shepherds and they move from place to place with their cattle. So it's a really that's a really beautiful place. And I would like to go film in Bhutan. Bhutan has been number one on my list for a long time now. So I'm just waiting for an opportunity to go there and film. So I don't know. Soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'll just rush with the question
There's
again.
a few possibilities that might happen.
Yeah, definitely. So how have your current projects been affected by the pandemic, and are you doing any filming, personal projects during this lockdown?
Yeah, so for the climate change documentary, we were meant to be going into Upper Mustang to film a story there, which we aren't able to do at the moment, which sucks. But we hope that when the lockdown is over, we might get the chance to do it then. So fingers crossed. Apart from that, it hasn't been too much of an issue for me and my projects, because a lot of them are in post-production. And even with the climate change documentary, we are able to make progress. We are trying to sort out this. We're doing this second round of fundraising, which is problematic in itself with coronavirus. Not many people want to spend money now, so that is an issue. But we are making some kind of progress on post-production as well. So it hasn't been a massive problem so far. And then I haven't been filming anything at all here. I was tempted to do some kind of little like coronavirus vloggy kind of thing, but it would have been horrendously boring. So I'm glad I didn't.
And for those who don't know, Deej is stuck in Nepal, in Kathmandu. So all right.
Voluntarily stuck.
Nah, yeah, you're ordering food, making your own food. So the other question is, how is it? Oh yeah, how is it doing stories in foreign land? How difficult is it to communicate with people who speak different language and are from different background culturally and socially?
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit tough, I have to say. But most of my stuff for quite a while now has been like foreign language stuff. So have got a little bit used to it. Obviously, it becomes, I would say, more of a problem in post-production a little bit. When you can just understand what's being said, you can be a lot quicker. When you have to get translations and everything, it can start to get quite costly and time-consuming as well. But in terms of culturally and stuff, like, it's wicked. I absolutely love it, because everywhere you look, there's, for me anyway, being like a foreigner from the UK, just seeing a different way of life is super duper interesting. So every detail of that I want to capture. Like, I love going to rural communities and filming their way of life. Suraj, I think you're the same as well. I've seen a lot of your really cool films done in these kinds of communities. So yeah, I don't know, like, it's my favorite part of the whole thing, I guess. It's just going to some crazy part of the world and meeting interesting people and hanging out with them and getting to know them. And like, people are just always hospitable, generous, and super welcoming, and like happy to be in front of the camera always as well. Like, I've never had any kind of never felt in danger or never had any major issues while I've been doing this. It's always just such a lovely experience meeting different cultures and people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are two questions for now, and then we'll slowly wrap up. The question answer is, one is very, where do you get your music from, or do you make them on your own?
Cool. I pretty much always use Artlist.
That's subscription based, right?
It is, yeah. It's $200 US a year, I think, but it's unlimited downloads. So like, it saved me an unbelievable amount of money, because the amount of songs I use from that is crazy. And the music's nice. Like, you don't always find what you're looking for there, but there is a lot of stuff, and it's for the kind of music I enjoy. It does work well. I think Music Bed is a good one if you're like really looking for something specific and you have the money to pay for that. And I think it's between like $20 and $50 or something like that.
Okay, cool. The other thing, how do you make them understand? I think it's the continuation of the previous question about different culture and different background. How do you make them understand your vision, and what do you want in, like, how do you make them understand your story and your vision for people who doesn't speak your own language?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, always try to be clear from the beginning, like what our angle is, because I think some people can be quite hesitant. You know, maybe they think we're going to take advantage of them, or show them in a certain way that they don't like. So, with a lot of the stuff that we're filming, it's about issues. It's about issues in these communities. So when they know that we're filming something that is going to raise awareness about their issue, they're completely on board, and they're more than happy to get involved and do what we need. Also, one of the key things that we do is we always collaborate with local NGOs that are doing good things in these communities. So they're trusted people. They know what's going on. They know what the people are like and like who to speak to and all of this kind of stuff. So they're very good at communicating our vision to the people in the community. Yeah.
How long do you plan to be in Nepal, provided lockdown gets over? And do you still plan to go up to the mountains, or?
I hope so. Yeah, it's really hard to know right now. I hope we do get a chance. So in my head, going to be going back to the UK around about the 14th or the 15th of May. But, right now we don't know if there's going to be a flight back to the UK at that time or what the situation will be. So just going to see what happens. But right now I'm pretty flexible, I guess. I might end up staying here longer if there's good reason to, maybe.
Yeah, there's always a good reason to stay longer.
Yeah, man. No, I love it here. It's wicked. It's been really nice to spend. I think this is like my fifth or sixth month in Nepal since September or whatever. So it's been good. Fifth month.
So as we wrap down, because it's already been 1.5 hours that we've been talking, there's one last question. How long are you going to grow your hair? That's very topic. That's very related topic question.
Who asked that? Do we know?
Mario.
I think I know which Mario that is. Hello, Mario. My mum absolutely hates it, so I think I'm probably gonna be forced to cut it quite soon. Maybe when I get back to the UK, I'll cut it off. So yeah, we'll see. If you think if you like my new long hairstyle, then give a thumbs up, or if you don't like it, give a thumbs down, and then we'll take a vote and maybe I'll cut it all off. Hey, thumbs up. One thumbs up. Yeah,
already, yeah. All right, are there any other questions that you might have? Anybody else? If not, we'll slowly wrap up. Any questions? All right. Okay, so now it's more personal questions coming up now. If you were a curry, what curry would you be?
Good question. That is a tough one. I'm gonna have to think about this. This is the most difficult question of the entire conversation.
Right? We should have started with this one.
I've got a bit of a cheat answer here because it's not really a curry, but I would say biryani, because it's like the only Indian food that I can properly cook. Maybe a veg biryani, actually. I'm trying to be a good vegetarian, not all the time, but cauliflower biryani. There we go.
All right. Okay, we just got one more question from Facebook. How is filming in Nepal different from other countries?
Yeah. Yeah. Like from my experience of filming like it's kind of, for me anyway, it's kind of similar to filming in India, especially like when I'm out in the rural communities. And for me it's a lot more enjoyable because people are just a little bit more kind of relaxed in front of the camera generally, or at least on their face they look their emotion, like, oh yeah, their expression looks quite relaxed, I would say. So, you know, naturally sometimes when you're filming this kind of stuff, you don't have too much time to like build up a rapport or a relationship with somebody, you know, you need to get a few shots of. So like in that situation, in places like Nepal, you kind of film it and quite quickly people get used to the camera and then they're acting quite naturally. If you do that in the from my experience, if you do that in the UK, they're like super people are generally super self-conscious, and like they'll be like adjusting their hair or like, you know, looking at themselves in the mirror to make sure they look okay, or they'll start like maybe laughing or giggling or something like this. And it's just it's it's quite the process can be quite slow in that kind of way. Another thing is, yeah, like I think that's the main thing, is that people are more willing to get involved. Sometimes in places like the UK, you'll need to like sit somebody down and really communicate exactly what you're doing and where it's going to go, and like, you know, they'll be maybe a bit more hesitant to sign the talent release form, or they're just a little bit more wary of what you're doing, I would say. So yeah, generally in Nepal, like it's just a lot more relaxed. People are chilled and they're just like happy to get involved, and that's a really nice thing about filming here.
Okay. So just on the final question and also a closing remark would be, what is your suggestions to beginner filmmakers or filmmakers and creative people in general? What would be your suggestions?
Yeah, like it's a bit of a standard answer, I would say, but like just film, just like you use your phone or you get a camera or whatever and just film stuff and then edit it and look at it and get feedback from people, find out if people like it or hate it, and be really critical. I think that's important, to be super critical of your own work, not like overly critical and negative, but you know, just like looking at it and trying to understand how you can make it better. But like, as I said, this guy here, the guy with the crazy mohawk, this is Sandro, my friend Sandro.
Hey.
He's the guy I was talking about. So he's the one that we started good haircut, man, better than my haircut anyway. But he's the guy that I started filming with, and we, as I said earlier, we were just filming for fun. We were just like messing around, and we'd film stuff, we'd mess up, we'd learn from it, and then we'd film again. And I think we had absolutely no experience at the beginning, but we just enjoyed it. You know, we had a camera in our hands often, and we would just film whatever people would let us film, whether it was the One Eye, the reggae band that I was telling you about, or like a terrible club night with like 5 people in the crowd, or a pub where, you know, it's just a bunch of drunk people and it's not a particularly enjoyable place to film. So yeah, you guys, I'll say this now, you guys should get Sandro on your next episode, and he can talk about the filming that he's been doing here in the mountains with NIMS and everything. He'll be up for that.
You should connect him to us, and we'll talk to him, and then we'll definitely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm sure he'll be up for it. Nod your head, Sandro, if you want to do it.
All
there
right,
we
great,
go.
man. We'll just mute him for now, but we'll talk to him soon. So thank you so much, Deej, for sparing your time from a busy schedule of not doing anything
Yeah.
and ordering stuff.
Thank you.
I just shared all of your links on the chat window. I'll be doing a formal post as well so that people can follow you on Facebook, YouTube, and you have your website, which is very well done. So thank you so
My
much,
brother
Deej.
did that. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Talk,
Thank you.
and also just to take this to another thing, the next talk that we are having is on April 15th, Wednesday. For those who are online, can participate. Then it's with our very good friend Raul Tidor from Spain. He is in the heart of this whole pandemic thing. He's the actually creative director and audiovisual storyteller. So join us back then, and then we'll be talking about how they're dealing with the pandemic and how being a creative, how is that affecting, and how he misses Satya. So yeah, so we'll catch then on Wednesday, April 15th, same time. I feel like I'm hosting a TV show.
You're the star of the show, mate.
Right. All right. Thank you so
Nice one.
much,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Yeah,
Take
we'll be
care.
in touch. All right.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye-bye. Take care.